In the heart of Youngstown, Ohio, where steel mills still cast long shadows over the town, 15-year-old Emily Harris walked to school on a chilly October morning. She was the only child of Richard Harris, a factory magnate whose sprawling industrial empire had made him a local legend and a target for rivals. Emily, oblivious to her father's enemies, adjusted her backpack, her earbuds blasting a pop playlist as she navigated the familiar streets. The neighborhood was quiet, lined with fading brick houses and maple trees shedding crimson leaves. She took her usual shortcut through a narrow alley, unaware of a black van idling at the corner, its tinted windows concealing 3 men, hardened criminals hired by a competitor to kidnap her for ransom. They'd studied her routine for weeks, timing her walk to the minute. As Emily stepped into the alley, the van lurched forward, its tires crunching on loose gravel. Across town, Jake Turner sat in the cold, polished waiting room of Harris Industries, clutching a creased resume. A single dad in his late 30s, Jake was raising his 5-year-old daughter, Lily, on his own after losing his wife to cancer 3 years earlier. His rugged face, etched with worry, told the story of a man stretched thin. His construction job had vanished in a brutal round of layoffs, and the bills were relentless: rent, utilities, Lily's school supplies, her favorite strawberry yogurt he could barely afford. His faded denim jacket and scuffed work boots stood out against the sleek marble floors of the office. Jake had heard Richard Harris was hiring supervisors for his factories, and this was his last shot at stability. He'd spent the morning psyching himself up, practicing what to say, but the meeting went south fast. Richard, a man with a temper as sharp as his tailored suits, barely glanced at Jake's resume. "You're underqualified," he snapped, leaning back in his leather chair. "No degree, no experience in management. Why are you wasting my time?" Jake tried to explain, about Lily, about his work ethic, but Richard cut him off, standing and shoving Jake toward the door. "Get out, I don't need your sob story." Humiliated, Jake stumbled into the parking lot, his face burning with anger and shame. He needed this job, and now he had nothing but a long walk home to figure out how to keep his daughter fed. As Jake trudged through Youngstown's industrial district, his mind churned with dread. How would he tell Lily they might lose their cramped apartment? Would he have to pull her from her after-school art class, the one thing that made her light up? A faint scream shattered his thoughts. It came from an alley ahead, sharp and panicked, followed by the low rumble of an engine. Jake's instincts, honed from years of protecting Lily, kicked in. He sprinted toward the sound, his boots pounding the pavement, and rounded the corner to a chilling sight: Emily, struggling against 2 men dragging her toward the open door of the black van. A third man, the lookout, stood nearby, a pistol glinting in his hand as he scanned the street. Jake's heart raced, but he didn't hesitate. Spotting a rusted steel pipe lying near a construction site, he grabbed it, his grip tight. Moving low and fast, he closed the distance. The lookout swung his gun toward Jake, but Jake was quicker, slamming the pipe into the man's wrist with a sickening crack. The gun skidded across the asphalt. The other 2 men froze, startled, as Emily elbowed one in the ribs and wrenched free, stumbling toward a dumpster. The kidnappers turned on Jake, their faces twisted with rage. The first man, burly and unshaven, swung a fist, but Jake ducked, driving the pipe into the man's knee. He collapsed with a howl. The second man, wiry and fast, tackled Jake, slamming him to the ground. Jake's breath left him, but he twisted, pinning the man with a knee to his chest. "Run," he shouted to Emily, who was frozen, her eyes wide with terror. She snapped out of it and bolted toward the alley's mouth, her sneakers slipping on the gravel. The lookout, clutching his injured wrist, pulled a knife with his other hand and lunged at Jake. Jake rolled, dodging a wild slash, and swung the pipe again, catching the man's shoulder. The knife clattered away. The sirens wailed closer now. Someone in a nearby apartment had heard the commotion and called 911. The kidnappers, battered and cornered, exchanged a glance and scrambled into the van, its engine roaring as they sped off, leaving a cloud of exhaust. Jake staggered to his feet, his knuckles bloody, his chest heaving. He found Emily crouched behind the dumpster, her face streaked with tears. "You're okay," he said, kneeling beside her, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. "They're gone." Emily nodded, clutching her backpack like a shield. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. I thought I was gone." Police cars screeched into the alley minutes later, lights flashing. Officers swarmed the scene, taking statements and combing for evidence. Emily, wrapped in a blanket, sat on a curb, recounting what happened. Jake stood nearby, his hands bandaged by a paramedic, his mind replaying the fight. Word of the attempted kidnapping spread fast, and soon Richard Harris' SUV roared up, his face pale with panic as he leapt out. He rushed to Emily, pulling her into a tight hug, his usual composure shattered. "You're safe," he kept repeating, his voice breaking. An officer pulled him aside, explaining how Jake, a stranger, had risked his life to save her. At the police station, Richard listened intently as the officers detailed Jake's actions, how he'd disarmed an armed man, fought off 2 others, and protected Emily until help arrived. Emily, still shaken, sat nearby, sipping water and glancing at Jake with quiet gratitude. Richard found Jake in the station's waiting area, still in his worn jacket, looking exhausted but resolute. The tycoon's usual arrogance was gone, replaced by raw, unfamiliar humility. "I was wrong about you," Richard said, his voice low, almost hoarse. "This morning, I treated you like dirt. You didn't deserve that. You saved my daughter, my only child." He paused, swallowing hard, his eyes meeting Jake's. "I'm sorry. I want you to work for me. Foreman at my main plant. Full benefits, good salary, enough to take care of your daughter. You've earned it." Jake studied Richard, the sting of their earlier encounter still raw. He remembered the way Richard's shove had felt, the cold dismissal in his voice. But then he thought of Lily, her gap-toothed smile, the way she'd crawl into his lap after a long day, her crayons scattered across their tiny kitchen table. A job like this could mean a real home, new clothes for her, a chance to save for her future. "For my daughter," Jake said finally, extending a hand. Richard shook it firmly, a flicker of respect in his eyes. As they left the station, Emily caught up to Jake in the parking lot. The sunset painted the Ohio sky in hues of orange and pink, and a cool breeze carried the scent of distant steel mills. "My dad's tough," she said quietly, her voice steadier now. "He doesn't apologize often, but he means it, and I'll never forget what you did for me." Jake gave her a small nod, his throat tight. "Just glad you're okay," he said. Emily smiled, a small, genuine thing, before rejoining her father. Jake walked home under the fading light, his steps lighter despite the bruises. He'd fought for a stranger's daughter today, a girl not much older than his own. And in doing so, he'd secured a future for Lily, a job, a chance to rebuild. When he reached his apartment, Lily was waiting, her tiny arms wrapping around his legs. "Did you get the job, Daddy?" she asked, her eyes bright. Jake scooped her up, his heart full. "Yeah, kiddo," he said, kissing her forehead. "We're gonna be okay."